McDermott Show.
Oh, here we go. Today we're going to learn about prevention and safety, our most precious, precious gifts, our children. So fasten your seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow with Morag Mackay. Did I get that right? Mackay. Awesome. Here we go. It's time to dance. Let's hear the music. You do the head bop. There you go. Just get in. Nobody's watching.
It's relaxed.
Here we go.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, I am grateful that you're tuning in. For those of you who have been tuning in for years and years and years, welcome back. So now, to address those who don't know anything about the show, this is what the show is about. I am committed to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, and as well as my viewing friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today's topic is going to be a little difficult because, you know, when it comes to children, there is like a law of nature. You know, we are supposed to go before our kids. We're not supposed to deal with any of this stuff. But losing a child must be the worst pain a parent could ever experience. There are probably no words that I could ever use that would describe the pain someone would feel when it's a preventable accident. We do everything we possibly can to keep our children safe, but when we look around, there's a lot of different ways that our children could be hurt. Some include playground, window, blinds, swimming pools, car seats. What would you do to keep your kids safe? So today we are going to talk with Morag Mackay. And did I say that right? I'm going, oh gosh, Mackay. So here we go. So Morag Mackay is with us today to explain what we can do to empower us, to make us aware. Her specialty, let me tell you, Morag has worked in the injury prevention and control for over 25 years. This includes injury, surveillance, research, education, policy, program planning, and evaluation. And today she's going to help us learn how we can prevent accidents and protect our most precious gifts. So since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Morag Mackay is here to do just that. Welcome, Morag, to the Lillian McDermott radio show.
My pleasure to be with you this morning.
And I'm sure that you've heard this over and over and over again, you know, that it's a great fear for a parent to lose a child. But when that loss is preventable, there's so many accidents that happen that we caused ourselves. I cannot imagine being responsible for the loss of my child or the loss of somebody else's child. So share a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this particular industry.
Well, for myself personally, I come from a large family. We've got lots of nieces and nephews, but I myself was not able to have children. So I had decided very early on I wanted to do something that would give back to kids. Yeah. So I started working in child injury prevention. And the organization that I'm working with right now, Safekids Worldwide, is pretty amazing in terms of how it came about. It was started by a pediatric surgeon at the Children's National Hospital in Washington, D.C. over 30 years ago. And it was for exactly the reason that you just explained. He was meeting parents in the emergency room, having to tell them I'm really sorry, but your child didn't make it. And parents often ask, was there anything we could have done? Was there anything we could have done? And he just said, wow, we don't have ways to get this information out to parents. And so he founded Safe Kids 30 years ago with the thought that there are very straightforward things that parents can do to reduce the risk of their child being involved in an injury incident. Mm-hmm. And we can prevent deaths and very severe injuries without bubble wrapping kids, because that's the other end of the spectrum. Sure. We want to give kids freedom. We want them to play. We want them to explore. But we want also to prevent those things that either end their lives or can really create a lifelong disability or really cause problems for the family.
Absolutely. It's got to be. I'm so glad that someone heard that need, because I can't imagine. We hear incidences that we go, how could that have happened? Like leaving your child in the car, or, when you're, and I remember we had signals when we were at the beach with our kids. If they saw us stand up or raise our hand, they knew they needed to keep their eye on us, and we would go over the drill. If this happens, what do you do? And so there were so many different things that, because in the back of our mind, the fear of losing a child is very much alive, and you do everything. So today, are you going to help us with these tips, especially with the open water or pools? We hear that seems to be the main accident. Maybe I'm off with my statistics, but that's your department. But does that seem to be one of the largest issues that we're facing today?
Yeah, drowning is the second leading cause of injury fatality in the U.S. It comes after motor vehicle-related injuries and deaths, but water is right up there. So.
Okay, and so today, this is what we're going to talk about. It's a difficult subject, but we need to prepare ourselves and prepare our children to know what to do as well. And we're going to continue our conversation with Morag Mackay when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. Okay, I can't even wrap my brain around it. I can't even wrap my brain. And the work that you've done, I mean, how do you come up with this work? As a researcher, do you contact people that have experienced loss, or do you primarily look at how to prevent it?
There are a number of different ways. We have some actually administrative data sets that are available in the US that I can analyze to figure out how big the problem is. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that those data sets don't tell us are the specific circumstances around a particular injury event. So we are really fortunate in the US. There is a national database where all the child death reviews that occur in the States go into one big database, and that's another place where I can go and learn a little bit more. But we also talk to parents, and we talk to parents about what they know, what they do, to try and get a sense around what they're currently doing, and therefore how we can craft messages to help them understand what they're doing might be increasing a risk or decreasing a risk, and really encouraging those things that reduce the risk, and working to find ways to make kids safe, both through education and awareness building. But we also work with local communities. We have 400 community coalitions across the U.S. Mm-hmm. They're doing things like car seat checks to make sure kids are safe in cars. They're spreading information around to local pools, around pool safety. They're doing a lot of local work, including working with children all the way from birth up to when they're graduating from high school.
Yeah. So that's really good to know. And the work with Safekids.org, for those of you who are tuning in and watching, Safekids.org is a great resource for us. And we're going to continue our conversation on the air pretty soon. I got the nod from Brian over there at the station, the mother station, we're about to get started. But this is, do you ever talk to the people individually on how to heal? Do you guys ever deal with that? Because as you're mourning for one child, there's a child that's still alive possibly that needs your attention. Do you ever?
We do talk to families when a child has passed away, but we usually wait for the family to decide when they're ready to talk to us.
Okay. Here we go. Sorry.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott radio show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's teacher is Morag Mackay. And today we're talking about how to keep our children safe. Now, when I talk about children, it's not just our own, because as a grandmother, I want to protect my grandchildren. But if I am a friend and I'm watching somebody's kid, I want to make sure that all the kids are protected. Or if I'm driving and a child crosses the road or something, I want to make sure, even if I don't know that child. Children are our future, as we hear in the songs and as we know that without our children, we would become extinct. We do. Our children, we need to protect them. So how do we do this? Now it's time to learn tips. We're going to start with pools, water, open water at the beach. And Morag Mackay has done a lot of research on this issue so that it will prepare us in what to do. And if we're in a situation where this has happened to us or that has happened to you, I am sure that might be a place as well that you can donate your time to help others as well. So, Morag, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today to enlighten us.
My pleasure.
Children. Great. Okay, so let's talk with, you off the air, and I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com and click on the YouTube video, because you get to hear the off-the-air conversations, not just the on-the-air, but the off-the-air conversations, which sometimes can be just as important. So we talked about how this research is used, where you gather this research, but just quickly, if you want to share a little bit about that with safekids.org, what can we learn there?
Yeah, so it's on the website. We have all sorts of tips on various types of injuries. All of our research reports are posted if people are really wanting to dig deeper into the issue. But there are also things like checklists to help families sort of go through preparing for a vacation or preparing before you go to the beach, what you need to think about around the pool. One of the things we have up there, particularly around drowning prevention, is something called a water watcher card. One of the things with drowning prevention is supervision. And, sometimes I think, particularly if you're at a beach that's very busy, it's really important that you designate one person to be watching the children at all times. And parents can trade off. One can do it for, 20 minutes and the next one can take it. Or if you're at a pool party and there are multiple adults, just take turns. But one adult should always have eyes on the water and watching the kids. And I think that this water watcher card is something they can download and just basically hang it around someone's neck, so it's really clear whose responsibility that is.
That's cool. It sometimes when you're in a party, and especially if it's a pool party, the adults get talking and the kids are playing and we forget. And you think that there's a lot of kids in the pool. I remember when my husband and I got married, we did a party afterwards, and for all the people that were from out of town, and we all came back to our house, and it was a lot of fun. But there was one kid in the pool. Well, actually, he fell into the pool. So there were no kids in the pool, and he actually backed into the pool, fell into the pool, and fortunately my brother was standing by the side, and he saw him struggling, and he jumped into the pool and took care of him. But these are the things that happen. Are these the scenarios that are most, what are some of the scenarios that you've seen that can be prevented? Yeah,
so some of them are things like a young child slips out of the house, and whether it's their own pool or the neighbor's pool, if you don't have four-sided fencing with a locking gate around a pool, a child can gain access. And if there's no adults around, that's just a recipe for disaster. But the one that you just shared as well, where you've got a lot of people in the pool, there's lots of splashing, there's lots of kids. And sometimes if there isn't somebody actually watching the kids, you can get a child that starts to drown. And, one of the things that people, it's almost a misperception about what drowning looks like. Mm-hmm. Because of movies, people think there's going to be lots of waving and screaming, but actually for a child, drowning is often very silent. Once they start to struggle and they're trying to keep their head above water, they put their arms out to the side automatically to try to push the water down to lift themselves up. So they don't have arms to wave in the air, and they're just trying to keep their mouths out of the water. And very, very young children don't have the upper body strength to do that. So unfortunately, you're not going to hear much at all. And this is why watching is so important. If you see a child not moving, sort of hanging in the water, if you will, that's probably a sign that they're in big trouble and you need to get in there. So
I can't even handle listening to this. I'm struggling right now just hearing it, because there's so many parents that have dealt with this. A little child riding their little tricycle, a wheel falls into the pool area because it's not gated, and the next thing you know, they're disoriented. So what are some of the things that we can do to protect our children? I see a lot of these courses. My daughter, who lives in Jacksonville Beach and is surrounded by water all the time, made sure that our grandson, Jake, went through this training where they threw him in the pool with clothes on, and it was hard to watch. It was almost like torture for me to see that she was preparing him for this. But at the same time, I'm thinking we're traumatizing him. Yeah. So what is right? What age do you start introducing children to these kinds of accidents?
The American Academy of Pediatrics says that children are not prepared for swimming lessons till around age 4, but it's really up to a parent to decide, because every child is different. So you sort of look at how they're doing, but they recommend around age 4, and certainly that's where the evidence is that swimming lessons work. Doesn't mean you can't start introducing them to the water before that by any means, but really to expect them to learn to swim before that age. Developmentally, most kids aren't able to do that. So starting at that age, learning to swim, but it's not just about swimming. We talk about water survival skills.
Yes.
There are essentially sort of 5 things that a child should be able to do. One is basically jump into the water and come back up to the surface. And I don't know, I remember as a child how scary that was the first time I did it, but it's something that they should be able to do. The second is, once they come to the surface, can they float or tread water for a period of time? And that just allows them to sort of calm down. They're floating, they're just treading water, and then they can start looking around. Can they turn themselves around and see where the edge of the pool is, or see where the beach is if they're in deeper water? Then can they move forward in the water? We don't need front crawl or butterfly stroke. Can they just make some forward motion in the water? And then if they get to the edge, are they able to get out and exit the water? And again, for very young children, that can be difficult. They have limited upper body strength. If there's a ladder there or steps, that's fine. But if they're trying to pull themselves up off the side of the pool, that can be challenging. So, and then again, if you're in deeper water, say in a lake, distances can be really big. So that's where being able to float or tread water for a period of time, hopefully someone's going to be coming out and rescuing you while the child is out there. But those sort of water survival skills are 5 basic things that every child, as they start to be more independent in the water, should learn.
So at what point should you put a child through that exercise? Because, you know, Jake was like 1.5 when they start doing this prevention and having him get up to the surface and float and find his way to a ladder. That to me was just so hard to watch, but at the same time, we'll be so grateful that my daughter had the insight of doing that if anything were to happen to him.
Yeah. Again, as I said, parents will make the decision themselves. We go with the American Academy of Pediatrics recommendation that really until age 4.
Oh, okay.
We don't, again, there are introduction to water lessons, which are fine, but in terms of really learning, that's the age that they suggest. We have evidence where it's actually effective. So before that age, I think, and always with younger children, supervision is key. And for very young children, we say within arm's reach. So even if your child even if you're convinced that they're fine in the water, if they are under that age of 4, we always say within arm's reach. Or if they're a weak swimmer, within arm's reach. So mom and dad shouldn't be sitting on their lounger sort of reading their book. They should be at the water's edge within arm's reach of kids when they're in the water.
Yeah, so this is work for a parent. Anytime you're saying, this is what I'm hearing you say, anytime you know a child's going to be near water, then this is work for a parent. Or there's at least one person who is the, what do you call it? The water watcher? Okay, yeah. So the water watcher, and you can get that water watcher card at safekids.org. And so what are some other things that we need to be aware of when it comes to water and safety for our children?
I think one of the other things, and just building on the supervision issue, is that sometimes when parents go to a pool and there's a lifeguard, or they go to the beach and there's a lifeguard, they need to understand that lifeguard is not supervising their child. They're there for rescue and resuscitation. They are scanning the pool, they're scanning the beach, looking for kids that are in trouble, and they'll be there to help rescue them. But it's not, oh, there's a lifeguard, I can let my own guard down and not worry about watching my kids. And I think that's something that some parents have a misunderstanding of the purpose of the lifeguard. So we always say, doesn't matter whether there's a lifeguard there or not, you still need that water watcher.
Okay. What about rip currents? How do you prepare a child that's playing in the water? We're talking about the open water now, that there's a rip current. Do you even allow your children? And I wouldn't allow them in the water if I saw that there were rip currents, but what you never know when the water changes. So,
right. So what we do is we say to parents, please look at swimming at a designated beach or designated area, because usually there has been someone that has gone in and assessed those hazards. There will often be signage if they know it's a site where there's a common rip current, or they put flags up in terms of risk level for that particular day. There are videos on YouTube as well that you can go and look and see what a rip current looks like. They are recognizable. The idea is to avoid them if you at all possible. In the event that a child or an adult gets caught in a rip current, what typically happens is they say they struggle to swim back into shore as they're being pulled out. And the recommendation to avoid that is either not to get caught in them in the first place, but in the event that you do, rather than trying to swim into shore, to swim parallel and try and escape the current. And then once you're out of the current, then you can either try and get people's attention if there's a lifeguard, but they're often watching for this sort of thing if there is a lifeguard, or eventually once you're out of that current, you may be able to make your way into shore.
Well, here's the thing. When people give me directions, if someone says turn south or turn north, and maybe it's just me, I'm like, no, tell me right or left. I don't know south or north. I'm just going straight, and that's I may be challenged in that way. However, if you're in a rip current and you're panicky, how do you know that you're going parallel or you're going across it? I mean, what are some of the tips for people? Because now they're dealing with a little bit of panic.
Okay.
If they're getting sucked in.
Yeah, it's like rather than swimming straight in, swim along the shoreline. Is that a little less than sort of parallel? Yeah. It's along the shoreline. Just keep following along.
So those are great words for a child. Yeah. I get you. Okay, so if you say, okay, but most people that are now stuck in this, they may not. They may panic. In a situation, how do you teach a child not to panic when they're in this situation?
Well, that's really tough. I think one of the things is just talking to kids about the potential things that might occur. And certainly for very young children, hopefully they're not alone, so they're not going to get caught in something like this. But we talk about the importance of talking to kids about hazards as they get older. So think about the teen. They're often off on their own, swimming, more likely to be swimming with a friend than with another adult. So talk to them about it, teach them ahead of time.
Okay. This is great information. And we're going to continue our conversation with Morag Mackay. I've said it again. And when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com, Morag Mackay will be right here waiting for you. I am going to master your name before the end. It's Mackay. I know Mackay. Okay. So, like I said, when you're in a panicky situation, saying shoreline, you're underwater, you're obviously underwater and you're feeling like you're being pulled in. Yes, it's vertical and it's parallel, but if you go to the shoreline, if you're underwater, you may not know where that shoreline is. Yeah. So what do you suggest then? Well,
again, when people talk, I'm not a lifeguard, and the lifeguard would probably be able to do this much more articulately than I can. But essentially, if a child is not a strong swimmer, you don't want to be swimming against the current. So then you would just be trying to, as you said, stay calm and stay floating, treading water, above water. and you know, sometimes they recommend you don't try and escape. You just wait for the rescuer to come, because if you're using up your energy fighting the current, you're going to get in trouble that much faster. So sometimes it's just, you just need to
Allow
relax
yourself to
and
drift.
float. Yes.
So float.
Yeah.
That was the first thing I taught my kids, is floating. Now, what is your opinion of these courses that throw kids in the water with their clothes on and their shoes on? Is that something that you, because I didn't hear you say that this was a good thing. I didn't hear you say that that was a good practice.
I've not seen any of, I'm a researcher, I look at the evidence. I've not seen any evaluations of programs like that. What I have seen is that the American Academy of Pediatrics, who looks at the available research, has said that developmentally it's about age 4. Now, as I said, that does not...
But most accidents happen before the age of 4, right?
Yes.
A little 1-year-old stumbles in.
Yeah, exactly. So swimming is one. When we talk about water safety, we talk about layers of protection. So swimming lessons, being able to swim is one layer of protection. Supervision is another layer of protection. Having a lifeguard at the site is another layer of protection. Having CPR, knowing how to do a water rescue, is another layer of protection.
Let's talk about that on the air. Let's talk about CPR, because things have changed with CPR. I remember when I was a kid and going through high school, there was a course that we took that was like a pre-nursing program, that it was an option. And one of the things that we all got was certified. But I hear that things are different now. I don't want to talk about it off the air, because we're going to talk about it on the air. But if we can talk about us, if we find our children, how we can intervene, because that time is so precious, right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's talk about CPR. Now keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted to let you know that that's important.
Yeah. So the thing that we find is that a lot of parents these days don't have CPR training, and even older teens can get CPR training. And if we're talking open water at the beach or a river somewhere, you're often further away from emergency medical services.
Yes.
So being able to start cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, right away can really increase the likelihood that the child will survive a drowning event. Most communities have somewhere within the community where parents can go and get CPR training and certified. You have to recertify periodically, but you know, it's really something to invest in yourself and for your family. And you know, if it may not be your child that gets in trouble, but if you're trained, you may actually be able to save another child's life as well.
Sure. So you talk about, okay, so you had different steps that you were talking about. But again, is it traumatic? I know that you go by the guidelines, by the pediatric guidelines, but in your research, can you create research? Because a lot of children are being traumatized with their clothes on, you know, a scenario that may never, ever happen. But is it good for them? Can you do some research about this? Because it really bothered me because when our children went through swimming lessons, they were like, you know, that age, 3-4 years old. But, you know, to throw a 1.5-year-old that's just now starting to walk into the pool, is that traumatic for the child? Will they develop traumas at this point?
Yeah. I don't know.
Please do some research on this and come back and tell us about it, Morag.
Yeah. I don't know. As I said, I just know there are some professionals that really believe that introducing kids in that way is good. The evidence just isn't there.
Hope you accept the challenge.
373-5959.
Do the research.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I am your host, Lillian McDermott, and it is my goal that we all learn from each other. Whoever's in front of you, let them become your teacher. Don't leave their side until you learn something from them. And remember, you can learn what to do and what not to do. Both ways, they're teachable moments. And so today's teacher is Morag Mackay. That's Morag Mackay. She is with Safekids.org. This is Safe Kids worldwide. And so if you would if you'd like to learn more about it, go to safekids.org and learn how to protect your children. There are so many different tips there. But here's the thing. It's about taking responsibility, which is the one word that if you were to take about my show is the no victim mentality. It's all about empowerment and freedom. And so if you are ready to shift, because if we create everything in our life, if we take 100% ownership of everything that happens to us, we can change it. If we created it, we can change it. So what does that look like for you? If you don't like what your life is like today, if you have disease, if you have, something that you want to change, dealing with trauma, dealing with something like this that we're talking about, how can we shift it so that we can be responsible? And on whenyouneedafriend.com, at the website, there is a place where you can answer the 4 questions of taking responsibility. So I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com and shift from victim to an empowered individual that will lead you to a life that you desire. So if once you're there checking out the questions, please make sure, and actually do this right now if you haven't done so already, please do this now. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com, become a subscriber. While you're there, there's a lot of different buttons that you can click on. You can click onto my social media, like me there. You can click onto YouTube, subscribe there. When you do those things, the information comes straight to you. So if you can't listen to me, the show at a particular time, because there's different times you can hear the show, then you can go to the podcast, or you can go to the YouTube video. The YouTube video has the off-the-air conversations and the on-again as well. And so make sure you be a part of that and be a part of this mission to grow together, to learn a new truth. And while you're there, check out my sponsors, because without my sponsors, there would be no show. So figure out ways that you can support my sponsors the way that they are supporting this information that we're sharing today. You won't hear this information in many places, but you are hearing it here. And I'm so grateful to the stations who have made a commitment to partner with the Lillian McDermott radio show. And so today, I want to encourage you, if you have any questions for Morag, you can call or text 407-373-5959. That's 407-373-5959. Morag, thank you so much for being on the show today. I am so grateful to you. This information is very hard for me to even listen, because it is my opinion that a parent should never bury their child. And so with that in mind, I'm doing this show for prevention. And I'm also doing the show for people that have dealt with this. Please join this group to become a volunteer of some sort. Do you guys need volunteers? What does this foundation need?
So, as I said, Safe Kids Worldwide has about 400 coalitions across the country in different communities, and most of the work that is done by volunteers. So if you go on our website at safekids.org, there is a page that you can say, find my local coalition, and you'll be able to find the contact for that coalition, and they'll be able to tell you what sort of opportunities there are out there. You can, get educated yourself and then go help them educate the community. You can learn how to be certified to check car seats and work with them at car seat clinics. So there's lots of ways that parents can become involved if they want to be part of a solution, which is keeping kids safe.
I tell you, I can't imagine. I can't imagine the pain. I had a miscarriage, and that was very painful for me, even that. And I can't imagine how much more pain that would be if it's a preventable accident. An accident, or whenever a child passes away, that's a terrible thing. But a preventable accident, I wonder if it has even more guilt for the parent or the people that are a part of it. So the 4th step of responsibility is taking what you learn and experiencing the grief or pain or whatever it is, and using it for the greater good, giving this back so that other people don't have to experience it. So I want to encourage everybody to go to safekids.org to give back to people that may be at the beginning of their journey, and you can help them through the pain. So let's talk about that. We talked about children falling into a pool or drowning in open water, but the time that we can be maybe helpful, if we find a child within a certain amount of time, let's talk about CPR. When I was a kid or younger and going to high school, I learned how to do CPR, and I hear now it's different. Let's talk about, give us some tips about what we need to know about resuscitation.
Well, one of the first things that you want to do is in terms of if a child does appear to be drowning, and we talk about drowning as a process. It starts. You have the most negative outcome. It's a fatal drowning, but then you have these near drowning events. We don't even know how many of those occur because we only count them if they make it to the medical system. But if a child begins to struggle in the water, starts that drowning process, someone needs to get in there and get them out of the water right away. We talk about putting them in a recovery position, and we talk about immediately establishing whether they're breathing or not, and that's where the whole CPR comes in. I think the thing that parents should know is that CPR for an adult is slightly different than CPR for a child. So you can get certified to do adult CPR as well as child CPR. So we're talking to parents about the importance, even if you're certified for an adult, to go and take a course in child CPR. It's just a little bit different. And it's important to think about that. And so we often talk to parents that are going to a prenatal class, and we start talking to them about safety before the child arrives. And one of the things we talk about is, what to do in terms of CPR and going to get certified, as well as, maybe a basic first aid course as well, just so that in the event that something happens, they are prepared.
So does the local chapter for Safe Kids Worldwide, will the local chapter be able to teach a parent how to do this, or a person?
No, we don't teach CPR. A number of our coalitions are either they're led sometimes by hospitals, sometimes by public health units, sometimes by emergency medical services. But in every community, there will be somewhere where they should be able to go and certify, or at least they contact the local public health department or the hospital. They should be able to be told times and locations for those sorts of courses.
Okay. So with CPR, because I want to go deeper here, because I think that we all need to have at least an image of what CPR is like. What do we need to know? You said that there's a difference between a child and doing CPR for a child and doing CPR for an adult. Is this something that you're equipped to share with us? Because I know you're a researcher and you do all the things.
I don't really think I'm the expert to go there. I just do know that it's really important that parents do get trained in CPR. In our research that we did a couple years ago, when we were talking to parents about whether they had CPR, it was well under half of parents had done it. And, all you have to do is start talking to them, or they hear about a story. And that's actually something else that we see in this day and age with the event. Online video, things go viral very quickly. So certainly around this drowning issue, there's a couple of things that relate a bit to this issue that I want to talk about. Okay. One of them is, I don't know if any of you have heard this term dry drowning, but there has been a number of videos that have gone viral where a parent had a child who had an incident in the pool and they seemed fine, but then a couple days later they got into trouble. And speaking to the medical experts, they say this does not happen. There were signs that the parent missed. So what you need to know is that if your child is in the water and they get water down the wrong tube and they're really, really choking and spluttering and having a hard time breathing, you probably want to take them and get them checked out. If they choke and splutter for a little bit and then they seem to be fine, just keep your eyes on them over the next 4 to 5 hours. If anything changes, if they have trouble breathing, they seem really drowsy and non-responsive, get them to medical care. But it just doesn't happen that a child has no symptoms at all and then suddenly a day later they're in trouble. That doesn't happen. So we just need parents to know that in the event their child gets in the water and has an incident where they start to either swallow water the wrong way or have a bit of a near drowning experience, that they should be watching that child very carefully over the next maybe even up to 8 hours, just to make sure that they seem okay. And then get them to medical attention the minute you're concerned about what you're seeing.
And so some of the signs that we would be looking for in those 8 hours is coughing?
Yeah, so if they're having difficulty breathing, if they seem really drowsy and non-responsive, then, or if they're still coughing a lot and they can't seem to clear their lungs, go get them checked out absolutely right away. But if they do cough it up and they seem to go back to normal and they're playing, but then later on they seem to be having difficulty breathing or they're drowsy, that's when you take them to the emergency department.
Oh my goodness, I've never heard of that. For those of you, safekids.org, that's where you can find some of this information. And we're going to continue our conversation with Morag Mackay of Safe Kids Worldwide when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. I don't like this conversation.
Sorry, that one's really rare. And this is why we want to talk about it, because the media talks about it and then parents get really panicked, and it's like, it's not really an issue. It's so rare. But really the message is the same. Watch your children carefully in the pool. If they get into trouble, watch them carefully afterwards for a period of time, and then just move on.
Yeah. So what are some of the other things that is important to talk about today?
Life jackets.
Okay, so let's not talk about it now because I want to talk about it on the air. So life jackets. What else?
Well, we could move on and start talking about heat stroke and the whole issue of kids in cars, and then maybe a little bit around child passenger safety.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I'm not saying that I'm not happy that we're having this conversation. I'm glad we're having this conversation.
It's a tough one, though, isn't it?
It is a tough one. I have my kids, like I said, I remember when I miscarried. Both my sisters were pregnant at the time, and I remember how difficult that was for me because nobody understood that was a life for me, that I had lost a child. Yeah. And that was in utero. I can't imagine loving this child and taking this child to places and having a little personality. And all of a sudden, that child is no longer there, and it's preventable because of something that you did. It could have been preventable. Parents that pull off like I think it was Stephen Curtis Chapman. I don't know if it was him. I remember somebody in his family was backing out. They ran over their daughter, their child. Please don't quote me with Stephen Curtis Chapman, but that's the name that comes to mind. But I remember going, oh my God, I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
So it's a simple, from that experience that he had, I remember if my car was outside, I would go to the back of my car and start and get in my car. Because that's how traumatic it was to think that I could run over my child.
Yeah, we talk about parents, the importance of doing that circle around your car. Sometimes it's not a child, sometimes it's their bike that they've dumped behind the car. But, it's just really doing that circle or being aware of where the kids are before you back out. A quick head count up. Can I see them all? Okay, well, yeah, we're good. Yeah.
But we live in such a unconscious world. We're on our phones. We're not paying attention. Yeah. We're doing things subconsciously. We just need to know that we've got to be present. Yeah. And these things happen when we are not present. Even when there's a party, like the situation that I was talking to you about on our wedding day, nobody was in the pool. There was no swimming. Yeah. This kid fell into the pool because he backed out. He actually wanted to go swimming. But because he thought that he could swim because he always had, floaties, it was an illusion to this child. Next thing you know, he was like, those signs, my brother saw his eyes were like this big. He thought he was playing, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't fun. It completely, so grateful to my brother for that, because that would have been forever, on my conscience too, even though I wasn't even near that area.
Yeah. Or leave her a voicemail at 403-373-5959.
That's just how I am,
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow together. Today's topic is not a fun topic, but it's one that we need to talk about. We need to protect our children. There's so many different ways that we can. We're talking right now, we've only been talking about water and pools and lakes and ocean, and we're surrounded in Florida. We're surrounded by water. And so why not start there? Morag, you had said that pool drownings or water or drowning is like one of the second
leading cause of injury, death in children in the U.S.
So we've got, what is the number one?
It's motor vehicle related. So kids in crashes, pedestrians, bikes.
So before we go there, let's finish up this segment with life jackets and the importance of life jackets.
So if you're in water that the Coast Guard manages, they require any child to wear a life jacket. And then state by state, there are additional laws that vary by age. But we recommend that anybody that's on the water doing some sort of water recreational activity wears a life jacket. And for kids, we also say if they're a weak or a non-swimmer, you can put a life jacket on them around the pool or around the beach. And then in the event that they do get in trouble, it's going to buoy them up. So it's a layer of safety, even if they're not in a boat. They can still wear it when they're playing in the edge of the water. One of the things, though, that we really talk about the importance of is making sure that life jacket fits. Mm-hmm. So it should be a Coast Guard approved life jacket. It should be appropriate for the weight of the child.
And that's on there, right?
Yeah. And those tips are available on Safe Kids as well. And on the back of the life jacket, there's usually some sort of signage or tag that says what the weight recommendation is and that it's approved. Okay. Then you want to make sure all of the buckles are done up snugly, and then there's a check parents can do to make sure that life jacket still fits, because particularly for very young children, it's really important that you get one that fits. So you just pick them up by the shoulders of the life jacket. If it rises up to the level of their chin or their ears, that life jacket is too big, and in the event they get in the water, the jacket's going to float up and they're going to sink down and potentially be in danger. So we often say to parents, do that check, but if you're buying one, take the child with you to the store and really and the other thing with that is they get enamored by the fact that they're getting to pick out something for themselves.
Yeah,
and they're more likely to wear it. We say the same thing for bike helmets. Take them and let them pick out the one, that fits them, but that they like the look of, because they're more likely to use it and wear it and not put up a fight if they've been involved in choosing it.
Yeah.
But just
and you can carry them around like a little 6-pack, just to make sure that. Go ahead, keep going.
No, I was just going to say, and I think that's the one step that parents miss. They weigh the child, they check that they got the life jacket, they get it on all snug, but then it's just doing that check just to make sure it really does fit.
Okay, so now let's switch, because you talked about automobile injury, and there's been so many changes with car seats and putting car seats in the right way. What is your recommendation there?
We have a great resource called the Ultimate Car Seat Guide, which is available on our website. And it's a really nice resource because you can go in and get basic information about car seats, or it actually lets you put in the age and weight of your child, and you can get more specific information around what you should be thinking of. It takes you through what to think about when you're buying, what you need to know about installation, what you need to know about making sure your child fits in that car seat. So it's getting the car seat in the car, and then it's getting your child in the car seat. And the final area talks about, when do I switch? Because that's something that really often confuses parents. Okay, I brought him home from the hospital, rear facing in this infant seat, but when do I switch to the next seat? And so we provide some guidance on there. There's lots of pictures, there's video clips within that app, and so it's a really useful app for parents to look at as a starting point. But as I said, we've got coalitions across the country, and they are often doing car seat checkups. So you can also come to our website and check and see if there's a local event coming up in your area, and you drive in and you work with a technician who's trained, and they will help you install that seat properly and do a teach back as they do it, so you know how in the future to reinstall that car seat if you shift it between cars. Okay.
And so that's, that seems to be the big deal. So what is the age where children can turn? And that's the specifics. You're the researcher, the specifics they can find at safekids.org, right?
Yeah. The current recommendation by the American Academy of Pediatrics is that we try and leave them rear facing to at least age 2, but it's dependent on the car seat that you're using as well. So that's, they have age limitations on them, but because of that recommendation, the industry is responding, and they're starting to create car seats that allow us to keep kids facing backwards longer, and they're certainly much safer facing backwards for as long as possible.
Very good. And weight has a lot to do with it, because when I look at my Jake, who is, a grown man at the age of 2 versus, Rylan, who is just a very petite little 2-year-old, does the weight matter?
Yeah, certainly. The weight is based on each car seat is different. Each manufacturer creates a certain weight range for that seat. So it's important for you to read the instructions that come with the seat, understand that situation. But as I said, if you go to a checkup event, you'll have a technician that can help you with that.
Very good. Now, we hear this, and it's, if I've heard it once, it's one too many, where parents forget their children in the car. We talk about heat stroke and different ways that we can protect our children.
Yeah.
We're getting too hot, but that right there, any tips? Because we were talking about backing up and running into your kids. Some tips where we can be aware and consciously, mindfully getting into the car and getting started in the car. Can you share any tips for that?
Yeah, some of the manufacturers of vehicles are now putting backseat reminders in, so that if you open the back seat door and then shut it, when you leave the car, it will ding and give you a reminder and sort of say, hey, you should check the back seat again. But there are apps you can download for your phone now as well that will do a similar reminder and just let you know. Other people say, moms say they do things like they always put their purse in the back seat with the child, so they know they have to get their purse out. They're going to remember the child. So there are different things that parents can do to try and remember. Those events, when they occur, are really horrendous. And I think the other message that we really want parents to understand is that it doesn't have to be super, super hot outside for a car to get hot and cause problems for kids. We had, unfortunately, 2 fatalities in the last week in California. And in one of them, it was more in Northern California, and the temperature outside was only something like 79 degrees. Yeah. But if a child is in a car, sitting in the car heats up, and we've got a display that we like to take around to communities, and it shows the outside temperature and it shows the temperature inside the car. And just because of kids having they're younger, they have less ability to manage extreme heat, so they get into trouble, and they suffer much more quickly than adults would in the same situation. And yeah, it's something that no parent ever wants to face. So
no.
Think about ways to remind yourself so that you always make sure that you check that child, check that back seat.
Yeah, it's a sad statement to say, put your purse in the back seat, because you won't forget your purse, but you might forget your kid. That's kind of like the state of our lives, where we're so focused on the things, not so much the people that matter the most. And so, but true, whatever it takes, put that purse back in the back seat if that's what's going to help you remember that your child is back there too. Now, so let's talk about the children. I remember moving up to the front seat. Our kids loved moving up to the front seat. At what age does the child get to be a passenger in the front seat?
We recommend not before the age of 13. Typically,
13.
Yeah, that's what we recommend. And it's in part just in terms of the size of the child, fitting a seatbelt properly, and then there's usually airbags in those front seats, and they are designed to protect an adult size model. That's how they're designed. So until your child reaches that adult size. And
what's that weight? What is the weight? Because a 13-year-old could be a small 13-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. So we there's no specific weight there. We just say on average, a child by the age of 13 should be safe in a front seat. So
very good. Very good. Very tough conversation. But I'm very grateful that you've done the research, that you're out there warning parents and how in giving us our power back to see that this is something that is so valuable to us, that if anything were to happen, that it would completely, dramatically change our lives. And it would change the life of our children as well, if it was just, anyone. So I'm just so grateful to you, Morag. Thank you so much, and the work that you're doing to protect our children.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes. And to you, my viewers, my listening friends, the website is safekids.org, and it is safekid.org, kids.org. Do everything you possibly can. Please remember, this is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good job. Tough subject. I had a hard time this whole time. This was probably the toughest subject, and I think it's because I truly believe that no parent should bury their children.
No, I agree with you there.
It's just I can't even, how sometimes you can just do what ifs.
Yeah, no.
What if this happens? My sister and I used to play what if all the time. Hey, if this happened, what if this happened? Then what if? This is not one that I could ever do a what if one. I can't even fathom it. But I'm glad that you have. I'm glad that you've researched it. So thank you so much, Morag, for that and for empowering us all to protect our most precious gifts, our children.
Great.
And to you, my viewers, thank you for watching today. I hope this has been helpful to you. I know that I've how many times I'm going to say this? I've had a hard time with this topic, but I'm glad that we had it, and I'm grateful to Morag. Thank you very much, and safekids.org. We'll see you soon.